So there were no Letterman jackets in high school for the crafty Gothic girls. And if you were one of those crafty Gothic girls who like didn't do sports and weren't really part of the popular crowd, then this video might be for you. What's up, loves? I'm Amy from Amy Lawless Design. I am a quilter, a sewist, web designer, and sometimes a few other things. And today I'm going to take you along on my journey of making a witchy Halloween Letterman jacket out of quilting fabrics. So really quick before I get started, I am going to blow your mind just a little bit with how I put my pattern pieces together. So instead of cutting them apart and taping them, I just lay these one on top of the other where the lines line up and then sew them together because it's easier and faster than cutting them apart and taping them. And I didn't spend all those years learning how to sew so that I could cut things apart and tape them back together. And that is a much sturdier seam than if I had taped it. One thing that I failed to mention in the beginning of filming this is that I am not using a full pattern for this. I am in the process of developing my pattern, which means there's currently no diagrams or instructions. I only have like the outline of the pattern pieces. And this is an experiment to see if the instructions I've put together actually work and turn into something cohesive, which they obviously did. Like, this is the very first time I've ever made it. So stick around till the end to watch some of the mess ups that I did and some of the improvisations that I had to make. Okay, keep watching. We're gonna put this thing together. So I'm not like chopping off the bottom of it because I will definitely reuse this pattern for a longer coat as we get further into winter. So for right now, I'm just like folding it up. So that'll chop us off right here. And then I've got this part of the panel down here with the cat where it says 13 pairs to the game. I kind of want to do something fun with that too. My husband's a poker dealer, so I like the whole 13 pairs to the game thing. It's kind of fun little piece of like tying in his work with mine. And it looks like it's going to be just a tiny bit too narrow. So I'm going to have to add a strip of fabric down each side to make it long enough, which is fine. So that got the back piece where when I cut it on the fold, hold on, let me make sure before I start opening my mouth and saying I know what I'm talking about. So there'll just be a teeny tiny bit of this dusty purple showing because I barely had to add any on to make this fit. I am not gonna cut this piece out just yet. I like to quilt all my layers before I cut. So I'm gonna set this one aside and move on to the front. All right, so the front, same thing. I'm gonna fold it up on the line for my size. And I have to make 2 of these. What do I have for fabrics? So I have to decide at this point for the front pieces of the jacket if I want to make them solid. Like I've got this chunk of fabric that matches the backing fabric. It's like a blender for it. And it's pretty good size. It's a full yard. So it's enough to do the front or the sleeves, but not both. Or if I want to do, I wonder if I have enough of this. This would be super cute sleeves. This is the bats. See the little bat friends? This is my favorite. I kind of want to do the sleeves in that. And then the other option is just to do scrappy sleeves with all of my scraps that I have that I just dropped on the floor. This would be super cute scrappy. Part of me kind of also wants to save the scraps and make them into a bag because I love scrappy Halloween bags. I guess I should probably start by measuring and seeing what I can cut out of this, yeah? So I need 2 sleeves cut on the fold. I don't think this is going to be big enough to get both of my sleeves out of it. Oh, that's a bummer. It's just barely too small. Next plan, I can do stripy sleeves with like make 2.5-inch strips of each of the fabrics that I love and use those for the sleeves and for the front, I guess. That would be cute. This one's so cute too. I love these. It's got the little like palmistry and the cats and stuff on it. Fantastic. I got this from Joann's before they closed. And apparently I got a ton of it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do 2.5-inch strips for the sleeves and maybe for the front too. So I just realized that right here in the fabric, no, this is fabric. It's like a Halloween witchy fabric. It has a Bible verse in it. That's really crazy. That is so weird. And that it is a Bible verse. I looked it up. It's Matthew 24, 34 through 44. That's a lot of 4s. About nobody knows the day of the second coming. And that's just really strange that they put it in fabric that is like full of like witchy things. That's crazy. To the folks at Riley Blake, did you know that this was in there? Got all my strips cut for my stripy sleeves. I also just realized I think I cut twice as many strips as I need. And if I did, like, I'm not even gonna be a little bit sad because like, that means I get to make a scrappy bag later. So yeah, I'm gonna hop over to the sewing machine, sew these together and see if I have enough for both sleeves from like one set of strips. So the good news, such as it is that I only had to sew together one set of strips. The others are just gonna have to be a bag to match my coat. And I can fold this over twice and make both sleeves out of it without, ooh, I hope. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna back that up. We're gonna cross our fingers and hope that it's wide enough. It is barely big enough. Oh my gosh. And 2 perfect sleeves out of this. Yay! Okay, and now I can move on to the front. So for the front, I have to have 2 pieces, this size and shape. And of course, I'm folding over the extra so I don't accidentally cut it weird. And I'm kind of on the fence about making something like scrappy or using this fabric that just came with the panel that I used for the back. See, it's a perfect match. It is kind of a lot. And I am usually a fan of a lot, but this is like a lot. I'd really like to do something lighter for the front, but I don't have anything. I do have these also. These cute little like poison bottles. Those would be really cute. And I will definitely have enough of these for the front. Yeah, that'll be really, I don't know. It's kind of cute, but does it go with the panel for the back? And then the sleeves, what do you think? I think it works because the sleeves are a mix of both collections. So the sleeves have fabrics from the Riley Blake collection, which is the one that goes with the panel. And then it also has pieces from the art gallery collection, which is this. So I think it's gonna work. It's gonna be darker than I expected, but it is a Halloween quilt, so we're gonna go with it. Yep, that is just the right size. Okay, perfect. Despite my best efforts, I still have all of this left over, which is probably enough to make a whole other coat or even a quilt or enough tote bags to last a lifetime. So I'm not entirely sure what's gonna happen with those. We'll see if the rest of the Halloween fabric gets used up this year or not. So this whole thing was part of my no spend quilt challenge that I started back in January to make it through the year without spending a single dollar. So I committed to no new fabric coming into my studio at all in 2025. And I haven't done that much sewing, but that's okay. I also haven't brought in any new fabric. Everything I've done, even my backings for my big quilts, have all been from my stash, which I'm super proud of. I've worked my way through it and I have been tempted a few times, but I haven't caved. So anyway, if you want to join the no spend challenge, there's no like start and end dates to it. You can get the PDF guide for that in the description. It's also available on my website, and I am going to I'm gonna take a pause for the moment and go feed my kids. As you can see through my window, it is dark outside, it's bedtime, and they are hungry. So I'm gonna leave this here and I will come back and finish filming the rest of it tomorrow. This is the best thing ever for pet hair on fabric. Look, it's a Black & Decker. It's like those old lint rollers that they used to use back before we had sticky lint rollers. It's got a little receptacle on the back where, that's disgusting, where it saves the pet hair that you pick up. It's the best thing ever for getting pet hair off of fabric. So the next steps for this quilt coat is to baste and quilt all the pieces together. And that's pretty simple. I don't cut out the pattern pieces until they're like basted and quilted because things tend to shift and we don't want things to get a little wonky and sideways. So for the backing, I've just got solid black yarn dye from Cloud9. It's organic. It's basic. I buy it by the bolt because I like to wear black clothes, obviously. So I'm gonna just get these basted. I've got like scrap, oh geez, that's a little too close to the iron. I've got scrap batting left over from another project I did, and I just use the like cheap Walmart spray base. I don't see the need to get fancy. I have used the expensive like 505 stuff or whatever it's called, And honestly, I couldn't tell the difference. So now I just get what's cheap and close. So that's cool. So I'm going to show you super quick how I mark my diagonal quilting lines using just my regular ruler and this, I think it's a Bowen chalk pencil. I'm a big believer in using what you've got. So almost all of the quilt rulers, this one's super old, I've had it for like 10 years, have these marks on them, 45, 60, and 30. So I want 45-degree lines on here. So it's just, this is the 45, so you can see the 45-degree marking, and I line it up along the straight edge, and then I just start marking. So I'm gonna put a line there, and then I want these quilt lines, we're gonna say 1 inch apart. That's kind of a lot, but that's okay. I hope I don't regret that later. And then I'm just gonna go along and scoot, I use this side. I'm just gonna go along and scoot the ruler over by 1 inch at a time, mark a new line, so on and so forth, and then I'll flip it the other way and do perpendicular lines to these, and then I'll just go sew over with the sewing machine. So I've got these all quilted. I've got all the pieces quilted and my pattern pieces ready to go. So the first one I'm gonna cut out is the sleeve, and this is half of it, so I'm gonna have to fold the fabric over twice. But to eliminate bulk, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and cut the whole strip in half and fold this in half. Perfect. And I'm gonna have to pin this on because I don't own any, oh, what are those things called? I don't own pattern weights. Also, the other thing with the sleeves, since they're made with the exact same strips, you wanna make sure that the bottom piece starts at the same place. So I'm gonna line up the bottom edge of the pattern with the bottom strip of fabric, and I will do that on the other one as well. And this just makes sure that they are like perfectly aligned. So you don't have like one sleeve starts at a different point and they're kind of off a little bit. Oh my goodness, if you guys hear things in the background, my kids are outside riding their four-wheeler and they are loud. Okay, perfect. So stinking cute. Oh my gosh, I love it. I am going to cut out the rest of the pattern pieces just like that, and then I will be back to finish the edges and sew them together. For the next step, I am going to use my serger to finish the edges around the pattern pieces that I've cut out. And I do this before I sew them together for a couple of reasons. One, if you sew them together and then use the serger, they end up not laying flat. Especially on something this thick, it makes your seams kind of like buckle in on themselves when you're wearing your garment, and it looks really bad, like really cheaply made. So I like to serge first and then iron open after I do the seams. The other thing that you can do is once you're done, if you don't have a serger, is you can bind each individual edge with bias tape once you sew the pieces together. I do like to do that on coats that I'm gonna be wearing like a lot. Since this is a seasonal coat, I'm not gonna wear it a whole lot. And I'm gonna do a later video on that, like how to make the bias binding and attach the bias binding and all that. Okay, so for this one, we're just gonna head over to the serger, give it a quick little once over around the edges, and then sew it together. I completely forgot to cut out my pockets. So I've got all my edges are serged and I was ready to sew it together. Oop, there it goes. Ready to sew it together. And I remembered that one, I have to put the marking lines on the back for the pockets and then cut out the pockets. Whoops. So this is just leftover piece of the backing, which just happens to be the perfect size for my pocket. And I'm just going for it. I'm not even gonna pin it down. I had to remark, you can barely see, remark the pink lines where the pockets line up. So for the pockets, so I'm right side down on the outside of the fabric. I'm just gonna pin these on, maybe where'd my pin cushion go? So I'm just gonna pin these on the outside between the two lines that I marked, and making sure that the little swoopy part of it is facing down, so it's a nice little cozy place for the fingers to go. And then I'm gonna do the same on the pieces for the front. Yeah, that's way long. Yeah, that's perfect.
It is? Okay, do you like the colors?
Uh-huh.
Are you sure? Mm-hmm. I want it to be perfect.
It's really beautiful, I love it.
Okay. I want it to be perfect for you.
It is perfect, baby, I love it, thank you. So now I'm just gonna sew on the pocket pieces, And for the first round, I just give them a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That gets us just to the inside of where we put the serging stitches on so those don't hang out. So now that the pockets are stitched on the front, we're gonna fold them over and press them down. That way they lay nice and flat once we finish the outside seam. This is where it starts getting fun. So the very first step to sewing the pieces together is sewing together the shoulder seams. So we're just gonna line these up, easy peasy lemon squeezy, and sew them together with I think the pattern, if I remember correctly, had a built-in 5/8 inch seam allowance, but we shaved a little bit off in the process of using the serger. So I'm just gonna go with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're gonna come back and put the sleeves on. All right, I'm gonna press the shoulder seams open. This just helps reduce bulk and then keeps the seams open so that when we add the sleeves here in a second, we are sewing against one layer of it being folded instead of two. So if we folded it over this way and then tried to sew the sleeves in on top of that thick chunk of bulk right there, that would be a nightmare. Next step is to, I got cat hair in my mouth, is to pin the sleeves in place. So to do that, where the heck did my pin cushion go? I swear I lose that thing more often. So to do that, we're gonna fold the sleeve in half and mark the center with a pin. And I'm gonna fold it out, and I'm going to, with right sides together, take the center that we just marked with the pin and put it with the center seam that we just sewed. And then I'm going to pin all the way around and just kind of manipulate the fabric so that it lays flat and put a pin every inch or so all the way around. This is honestly the hardest part of making a jacket, is getting the sleeves lined up with the shoulder seams. So now that I've got the sleeve sewed on to the body of the jacket, I am going to, oops, that's stuck. I'm gonna sew another seam, and this is gonna, ooh, geez, oh mercy, I am making a mess of my thread. So I'm gonna sew another seam. Interesting, zoomed in. So this is the sleeve, and then this is the body. I'm gonna press the seam allowance that I just made from sewing the sleeve onto the body. I'm gonna press it toward the sleeve that way, and I'm gonna sew another 1/4 inch, and this will permanently flatten the seam toward the sleeve. Pressing it toward the sleeve will make sure that the bulk of the seam lays flat against the shoulder rather than like puffing up and looking weird. Okie dokie, this is the final part of the construction and the most fun part, sewing the final seam. So right now it looks something like this. We've got like it kind of lays out flat. Looks kind of like it's gonna be a coat one day when it grows up, and it's not there yet. So we're gonna put it all together. We're gonna fold it in half with the right sides together and pin in place. And for the pinning, I like to start at the armpit and work my way down both sides. That way, if something is a little bit off, it gives us a chance to kind of gather and fix it. So here's the armpit seam. I am going to pin these first, and this is gonna be super bulky. Like sewing through this is gonna be bulky. All right, and then when we stretch it out to the end and lay it out flat, I can see that my seams line up perfectly, which is great. That means my sleeves are gonna line up and not have any weird extra, they're not gonna have crooked seams at the end that I have to worry about trimming off. Okay, and now I'm gonna go down the side, and this is where it gets a little bit fun because we've got the pockets, and I can see that when I lay, oh, let's see, can you see that? When I smooth it out from the armpit to the end, it lines up perfectly, which means I don't have any extra. Look at me go. So I'm gonna pin down the side and put one pin here. And then the trickiest part of this is the pockets. And for those, since we're doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance, we're gonna go down 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're gonna go down 5/8 of an inch from where the pockets line up, and we're gonna put a pin there. And a little trick, because I forget things, a little trick that I learned a long time ago is anywhere that you want to pivot, start, or stop, add 2 pins. That way your brain is like, why is there 2 pins there? And it reminds you to turn. So I'm gonna put 2 pins right here, and that's gonna let me know that when I get to those 2 pins, it's time to turn and go down the side of the pocket. And then for the pocket, same thing, we're gonna pin around the outside of it. And this doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm back at the other corner. I am going to remind myself to keep sewing, and that's where I'm gonna put my pin, and then another pin so that I remember to pivot. And then one more, maybe two down here. Okay, I'm gonna do the other side and we're gonna head over to the sewing machine. So I'm gonna start at the edge of the sleeve and just sew a line down where we just pinned. And this part's the tricky part because it's so thick. This is where you go slow. Even with a heavy duty machine, I still have to go super slow over all these bolt. Perfect. And I'm gonna pivot on the seam. And remember, when we get to the 2 pins, we pivot there as well. Okay, that's the first side done. I am so excited. Look, there's the sleeve. Okay, now I have to do the other side and then we get to have the first try on. Yay. Okay, I've got it almost done. And here comes the first try on. I'm so stoked. I'm also probably gonna scoot my camera back a little bit more. Ready? Yay. I love it. Oh my goodness, it's so stinking cute. That back is so cute. So stinking cute. I'm absolutely obsessed. So stoked. All right, now I gotta go finish the inside edges. So even though I use the serger on these edges, I still wanna put binding on them, just make them look nice so they look finished. I guess I could always just fold them over too. That's a lot of seam though, isn't it? I'm gonna go look around and see what I've got in my like notions and binding drawer and figure out what I'm gonna do with the rest of these seams. So I completely forgot to mention that the inside seams of the pockets need to be finished because there's no lining in the coat to cover up the raw edges of the pockets. And these are super simple. I'm just gonna run it through the, oh, I dropped some scraps down there. I'm just gonna run it through the serger real fast just to give it a nice neat edge. And I'm not worried about getting it perfect. So that just gives it a little bit nicer, oh, is that zooming in? Gives it a little bit nicer edge than leaving it raw or cutting it with a pair of pinking shears. Yeah. Next, we're gonna make the bias binding to go around the outside edge and we'll be done. Since I used the serger around the sleeves, I don't have to fold them over twice to finish them. I just turned the whole thing inside out and then I'm gonna fold these over like a 1/2 inch or so. But a little trick that I learned from a friend online is this. So here is the edge that I sewed, where I sewed the sleeves together. And I am going to make a tiny slit, 1/2 inch up, maybe. My scissors are kind of dull, so this is, don't have a heart attack, please. I'm not cutting all the way through. So you don't cut through the seam, just cut through the serged edges. So I've got a slit there, about a 1/2 inch up. And once again, I have lost my pin cushion. So now when I go to fold this up, it lays nice and flat. And since the edges are serged, I don't have to fold them under twice. That would be so much bulk. It just really isn't necessary. And I'm just gonna pin all the way around. Oh my pin came out. It's stabbed me in the hand on the other side. Yeah, okay, so since these parts of the seam are going on also opposite directions, it's nice and flat. And now I'm gonna hop over to the sewing machine and stitch this up. So I've been kind of playing with the idea of having this be like a Letterman style jacket. Part of that is having a patch on the lapel. And I was like, my goodness, I would love to have a patch on the lapel because how cool is that? But like, what do I do? Because it's kind of a busy print, you know, the front of it. So I'd love to put something like right up here in this area, but what? You know, I don't want to put just a quilt block up there because that's cliche because I'm a quilter. However, this panel that I cut the bottom off of has this number 13 on the bottom that would be so cute as a patch. And I'm kind of excited. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm gonna fussy cut it style. We're gonna give a 1/2 inch on each side. I'm totally not worried about this being perfect at all. Oh, this is gonna be so cute. I'm so excited. And then I think I'm just gonna pin it on kind of wherever, to be honest. I think I'm gonna pin it on, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that's super cute. So I'm gonna leave the edges of this raw. We're gonna hop over to the sewing machine and see how that works. That looks pretty good. I was gonna do some free motion quilting around the 13, but I think it's kind of perfect the way it is. It's secure on there. The edges are gonna fray as I wear it, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. I had every intention of showing you how I make my own bias binding out of quilt fabric. And then I went to film that tutorial and I messed it up so bad. Horribly embarrassing how bad I messed up this binding. So I finished it, I finished making it, and I made enough quilts to keep a small third world country warm. So I will be back next week with a tutorial on how to make bias binding that I film properly and hopefully don't mess up the entire process. So I'm gonna pop over to the sewing machine and sew this on, and I'm gonna bring you along, obviously, because that's what we're here for. But please know it's not perfect because, again, I made a lot of mistakes with this. Yeah, let's do this. So I made a double fold bias binding, which basically means it folds over into the middle and then it folds over again. Well, maybe if I pressed it enough, it would. My word, we might start with the other end because I did an absolutely terrible job of pressing that end. So to sew it on, I'm gonna start at the back of the neck, and I'm gonna sew it onto the inside of the jacket because I want to hand stitch down the outside of the jacket. And I'm opening it out all the way. You can see I've still got the crease lines. Can you see that? No, that is really far out. I'm gonna line it up on the edge of where the edge of the binding meets the edge, with it folded open, where the edge of the binding meets the edge of the jacket. And I'm gonna stitch in the ditch on this first crease line from, oh my goodness, I need to increase my stitch length. So I'm gonna stitch in the ditch for the first crease line from where I pressed it. And the reason that you use bias binding for stuff like this is because it pivots corners a lot easier than straight binding. And you can just kind of gently work your way, oh my goodness, what am I doing? You can kind of gently work your way around the curved edges of the coat. I just realized that if I'm going to add tags to it, this is probably the appropriate time. So I've got a couple of, oh geez, not that one, that one's on the floor. I've got a couple of these tags from, can you see that? Who did I get these from? Sarah Hart's, and I'll link to the store where I got these from. This one says Made with Magic, and this one's just a little, can you see that? It's kind of bright. This one says Made with Magic with a rainbow, which totally matches the witchy vibe. This is just a little flower on a peach background. But if you're gonna add these, you kind of need to slip them in under the edge of your binding. So I'm just gonna do that super, super fast. And yes, I probably should like pin those down or something, but I'm not. I just sew over them. And then, so now I'm at the tail end of my bias binding, and I just realized I should have put this edge under the edge of where I just came from, but I forgot. And that's okay because I'm a human and humans are allowed to make mistakes. So I'm simply going to go get a pair of scissors and cut off this extra right here. So there's a shorter tail, and just tuck it under the edge of this piece right here. It's really wild to me, the number of people who think that because you create sewing content on the internet, that you should have to be perfect at sewing, and that simply isn't true. If you're following me because you think I am perfect at sewing, you should absolutely find someone else to follow because I am not it. And then to keep the outside edge nice and tidy, I'm just gonna finger press this piece over, cut the little dog ear. My God, we've got to come up with a better term for that. I don't go around cutting up puppies. Okay, so that's just gonna go lift my presser foot and kind of just stuff this little folded edge under there, and then fold this piece back over. And then you can see right here, this is where, down here is where I stopped my last set of stitches. So I'm just gonna sew to the edge of those and we'll be good. All right, so I've got it, again, so bright. Why is it so bright? I've got it sewed where the seams overlap, and I'm just gonna trim the edge of this, again, at an angle. Everything we're doing is at an angle on this. That just prevents bulk. And now I've still got enough bias binding left over to bind probably a whole other coat. All right, now the fun part. So the part of sewing that's going to give you the most grief is this part where the edges of the bias tape or the bias binding overlap. So here's where we crease the seam so that we have a nice tidy edge. And here's the thing, I'm all about making this process as easy as possible. So to make sure that these edges stay where they're supposed to while I'm hand sewing, I'm just gonna give it a little bit of help from my good friend Elmer. Just put a few little dabs of glue and then line it up. Oh, yeah, that's definitely gonna need some heat. I'm gonna give that glue just a little bit of heat. It's coming out at the top and I lack the patience to wait for it to dry. So just fold it over once, the first fold, and then again at the second fold. Here's the stitch line where we sewed it along the front. You can see this line right here. So I like to give it a little bit of a tug and just pull it over where it's beyond that line. And then I'll just hand stitch the whole thing down. See my cute little tags? Aren't these adorable? This is the inside of the neckline. So cute. I'm so in love with it. All right, I'm gonna grab my binding clips and just clip the whole thing down just to keep it in place. And my binding clips are like a Hot Mess Express mix of like Wonder clips, and I have rainbow Wonder clips. And then I have like binding clips from the school supply aisle. I am nothing if not inconsistent. And so I'll just clip it down and go along the edges, and just like you did when attaching it to the edges, when you get to the curves, put a little extra clip around the curves. But honestly, if you did a good job of sewing it around the curves, then clipping it around the curves is pretty easy. And then I will stitch it all down by hand, which is my favorite part. Oh my, there we go. My camera no longer focuses like it's supposed to because my kid dropped it and broke the little lens thing. But if the lighting is even a little bit weird, like there's more light behind me than there is hitting me, the camera's like, screw you, dude, I'm gonna focus on whatever's in the background, including the leftover pile of wood from like all of my various construction projects. That is not why we're here. This is everything I hoped it would be, and I am super, super, super stoked with how it turned out. I'm happy enough with this that it might actually be worth the effort for me to put together like the sewing instructions and actually release this as a pattern, because I am in love with it. Like it ticks all the boxes of everything I wanted it to be. And also, I'm not from Iowa, despite my shirts being about Iowa women's wrestling. I'm a supporter of Iowa women's wrestling. I don't live in Iowa, nor do I wrestle. So yeah, it might be worth it for me to put the effort into turning this into a pattern or a course. If that's something you'd be interested in, make sure you drop a comment below and just let me know. If I get enough comments on it, I know that enough people will buy it, and I'll like follow through with turning it into something. If this was fun, make sure you hit subscribe and ding the little bell thingy so that you know when I come back with my next mildly unhinged tutorial, and I will see you very soon.